Hey, what up, guys? John from Mongo Fishing. So today's December 31st. It's the last day of the year, and with that, I wanted to bring you my top 5 baits of 2018. Now, technically, I'm bringing you my top 7 baits of 2018 because I have 2 in the topwater category and I have 2 in the crankbait category. But the 5 categories I'm bringing you are my favorite topwater, favorite jerkbait, favorite crankbait, favorite bladed jig, and favorite worm. Each of these I will link down in the description below so you can purchase them yourself if you wish. And some of these are baits that have been around for a while, and some of these are baits that I have learned about recently, but they earned permanent places in my box and caught me a bunch of fish. So let's get into it. We'll start off the top of the water column with topwater baits. I'm sure most, if not all of you, have heard of the Whopper Plopper. Comes in, I think, 5 different sizes: the 75, the 90, the 110, the 130, and the 190. This right here is the 90. I mean, this bait, if you're not throwing this, you need to throw it. It's an awesome topwater bait. The only downside is it doesn't work well in or around grass. You need good, open water for this thing to really work well. But this thing's a killer. So that is my number 1 topwater bait. Now, my other topwater bait is one that's a new one for me. I only learned about this a few months ago, and I don't think I have any videos on it. And this is a locally made buzz bait. Now, I have lots of buzz baits, and I throw buzz baits quite a bit. But this one I learned about back in, I think, September. And I've been throwing it, since then. And I mean, I've done surprisingly well. This is now my number 1 buzz bait, my go-to buzz bait. And it's a local company called Black's Custom Lures. I'll link them. They have a Facebook page. I'll link it down in the description. But this is called their Toad Toter. And what it is basically, it's just a regular buzz bait, right? But there's a little brass wheel right here that this blade is smacking against. As you can, I'm not sure if you can see that. I mean, I've dented my blade from using this thing so much, but has a nice squelch to it. Has a nice, smacking sound when the blade hits that piece of brass. I mean, this thing, it catches fish. I can't tell you how many 2 to 4 pound bass I caught with this, and I didn't start throwing this until probably late September. I mean, and it's only been, what, 3 months? And I've caught just a ridiculous amount of 2 to 4 pound bass with this thing. So I pair it with a Zoom horny toad. Nothing special, but this thing flat catches fish. So that was my other favorite topwater. Let's move down to jerkbait. My number 1 jerkbait is the Jackall Re-Range. A little pricey. It's about a $15 jerkbait, but it flat catches fish. I throw jerkbaits I throw quite a bit of jerkbaits. Some are higher price point than this, and some are lower price point than this, and obviously different sizes too. Different sizes for different times of the year. But if I had to pick just one jerkbait, it's the Jackall Re-Range. Crankbaits. This one I have 2. I have a lipless and I have a lipped. So let's go with the lipped crankbait. This right here is the Reaction Strike Ranger. It's a little tiny guy. I mean, it's only like 2.5 inches long. I learned about this in, I think it was in the July mystery tackle box. And the initial looks, I wasn't too impressed with it look-wise. I did need to do a hook replacement on it because the hooks were too long and they were tangling with each other. But this thing flat catches fish. And I've used it in probably 3 or 4 videos this year because it catches so many fish. This is the Ghost Bluegill color. I've got probably 6 or 7 colors of them now. I love this thing. In fact, I like this thing so much that when I saw that Reaction Strike was looking for pro staff members, I decided to apply because I believe in representing companies whose products I truly believe in, and this is one of those products. So I pulled the trigger on it and jumped on that. So the Reaction Strike Ranger. It's the only crankbait that I'm aware of, the only lipped crankbait that I'm aware of that has a dorsal fin. I don't know if that makes a difference or not to the fish. It doesn't really make a difference to me, but I know that it flat catches fish. Next up is lipless crankbait. You guys know that I'm not a huge fan of lipless crankbaits, but I do throw them on occasion. The lipless that did the most work for me, I don't know if I have it on video or not, has got to be the IMA suspending vibration. Now, this little crankbait right here suspends just like a jerkbait does. Rip it through grass, whatever, just like you would typically run a normal lipless crankbait, but this thing will suspend. So if you stop it, it will suspend. I don't know another crankbait, another lipless crankbait that does that. I got it 2017, caught a 5-pounder on the very first day of throwing it, and then didn't really use it much after that. 2018, I didn't throw it a whole lot, but the few days that I did, I caught decent fish with, including my new personal best smallmouth at 3 pounds 12 ounces came off of this guy. So it didn't catch me a lot of fish, but it did produce good fish. And I'm sure if I used it more, it would produce a lot of fish. But, I don't throw it a whole lot, but this is definitely my #1 lipless crankbait of 2018. And I did use several others, but this is the one that produced the most and or biggest. Next up is bladed jig, chatterbait jackhammer. Now I had a hard time getting myself to purchase a $15 or $16 chatterbait, knowing that I can get one for $5. People kept telling me this thing is the way to go. I didn't believe it, but eventually I pulled the trigger on one, bought it, went out, threw it, and they weren't lying. This is the way to go. So much so that I've bought several others since then. And I probably have 10 to 15 different chatterbaits. This is the chatterbait. Not necessarily this color, but definitely the jackhammer chatterbait is the bladed jig to have. There's no doubt in my mind. So, and then worm. So it's a stick style, right? Just like a Senko or a Yum Dinger or any of that stuff. But this is the Big Bite Baits 5-inch wacky stick. Now, why the Big Bite Baits 5-inch wacky stick and not some other worm? And that's because this comes with an O-ring built in. You can see it right there. So if you rig this Texas style, it fishes just like any of the others. But if you want to fish it wacky style, the O-ring is already built in. No need for an O-ring tool, no need for extra O-rings. They are already pre-installed. And this thing works just as effective as any of the others, and for a cheaper price point. I mean, I can't speak enough about this particular worm. I love the Big Bite Baits 5-inch wacky stick. I guess the only problem I have with it is availability. I don't know any store that sells it. I have to get mine off of Tackle Warehouse. And that's that, guys. Those are my 5 or 7, depending on how you want to look at it, top baits of 2018. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It's right down there. It looks like me holding a fish. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions about any of these baits, drop them below. Let me know. I will answer them as best I can. Again, guys, thank you very much for watching. As always, get out on the water, be safe, and go stick some lips.